The silence that followed was worse than being caught. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. No doors slammed, no voices raised. Just a pause that stretched too long, like the air itself had noticed something it shouldn't have. I remember the exact moment. My hand was still resting on his chest. Not pressing, not pulling, just there feeling the slow rise and fall beneath my palm. His shirt was half unbuttoned, the fabric soft and warm from his skin. We weren't even moving anymore. We had already crossed that invisible line minutes ago. And somehow the stillness after felt more dangerous than the crossing itself. Then the door creaked. Not fully open. Just enough. A shadow slipped into the room, tall, familiar. And for a second I thought I imagined it. That maybe it was just my guilt playing tricks on me. But then I saw his eyes. He didn't step inside. Didn't say a word. Just stood there in the dim hallway light, one hand still on the doorframe, like he had walked into something fragile, and knew better than to break it. My breath caught before I could stop it. The man beneath my hand went still too, not tense, not startled, just aware, like his body understood before his mind had time to react. "Hey," the voice from the doorway said quietly, too calmly, too controlled. I pulled my hand back like I'd been burned, fingers curling into my own palm as if I could erase the memory of where they'd been. My heart was pounding so loud I was sure it filled the whole room. "Didn't mean to interrupt," he added, but he didn't move. Didn't look away. And that's what made it worse. If he had shouted, I could have defended myself. If he had slammed the door, I could have hidden. But he just watched. Like he was choosing to remember every detail. The space between us felt suddenly too small. The bed, the dim lamp, the open window letting in cool night air. Everything was still exactly the same. And yet nothing felt safe anymore. I opened my mouth to say something, anything. But the words stayed stuck somewhere behind my ribs. Because this wasn't just someone walking in on a mistake. This was someone who wasn't supposed to see this version of me. And somehow, he already knew exactly what it meant. He closed the door gently. Not all the way, just enough that the hallway light disappeared, leaving us in that dim, amber glow from the bedside lamp. The click was soft, almost careful. Like he was protecting something. Or containing it. No one moved for a few seconds. I sat at the edge of the bed, palms pressed into the sheets, feeling the faint wrinkles beneath my fingers like they could anchor me to something real. The man beside me adjusted his shirt slowly, button by button, his movements calm too calm. And him, the one who saw everything, stayed near the door. Watching. "You okay?" he asked. Not to me. To him. That's when something inside my chest twisted. Because that tone, it wasn't angry. It wasn't accusing. It was steady, controlled. The kind of voice you use when you're holding something heavy and don't want to drop it. "I'm fine," the man next to me replied, his voice low, almost casual. A lie. I could hear it. I could feel it in the way his knee brushed mine for half a second before pulling away. Silence stretched again. I finally looked up and met his eyes. God, I wish I hadn't. There was no confusion there. No shock. Just understanding. Deep, quiet understanding that settled into my skin like cold water. "You should probably head home," he said softly. Again, not to me. Like I wasn't even part of the equation anymore. The man beside me stood, grabbing his jacket from the chair, the fabric sliding against wood with a soft scrape. He hesitated just a fraction of a second, his hand brushing the back of my shoulder. It wasn't bold. It wasn't even intentional, maybe. But it was enough. My breath caught, and I knew the other man saw that too. Of course he did. He sees everything. "Text me when you get there," he added, already turning toward the door. Normal words. Casual. But they landed differently now. The door opened. Closed. And just like that, it was only the two of us. The room felt smaller. Warmer. Like the air had thickened. I stood slowly, my legs unsteady. My fingers instinctively smoothing my shirt like that could undo anything. "I can explain," I finally said, the words barely above a whisper. He let out a quiet breath. Not annoyed. Not tired. Just measured. "I know," he replied. And then he stepped closer. Not fast. Not aggressive. Just one step. And suddenly the distance between us didn't feel safe anymore. "But I don't think you're ready to." His voice was low. close enough now that I could feel it more than hear it. And that's when I realized something I wasn't prepared for. He wasn't going to tell anyone. He wasn't going to expose me. He was going to keep it. All of it. And somehow, that made it worse. He didn't leave. That was the first thing that unsettled me. Most people would have walked out, needed space, slammed a door just to prove they felt something. But he stayed exactly where he was, close enough that I could hear the quiet rhythm of his breathing. And somehow that felt more dangerous. I took a step back, but the edge of the bed caught behind my knees, forcing me to stop. The room felt too warm now, like the air had shifted. Thick with everything neither of us was saying. Why didn't you say anything? I asked, my voice barely holding steady. He tilted his head slightly, studying me in a way that made my skin tighten. Would it have changed anything? He replied. I didn't answer, because we both knew it wouldn't have. My fingers curled into the fabric of my shirt, gripping it like I needed something to hold on to. His gaze dropped, not in a way that felt invasive but aware. Like he noticed every small movement, every nervous shift in my body. That same look. The one from the doorway. Only now it was closer. More focused. You're shaking, he said quietly. I hadn't even realized it. But the moment he said it, I felt it. The subtle tremor in my hands, the uneven way my breath kept catching in my chest. I didn't plan this, I said quickly, the words rushing out before I could stop them. It just happened. A weak defense. We both heard it. His lips pressed together for a second, like he was holding back a reaction. Not judgment. Not anger. Something else. Yeah, he murmured. Things like that usually don't come with a plan. There was a pause. Then he moved again. Closer. Not enough to touch me, but enough that I could feel the warmth of him now, like standing too close to a fire you're not sure you should trust. My heartbeat picked up instantly, and I hated that he noticed. Because his eyes softened, just slightly, like he understood exactly what his presence was doing to me. That's not what bothers me, he added. My throat tightened. Then what does? I asked. His gaze dropped for a second, then came back up, locking onto mine in a way that made it impossible to look away. The way you didn't stop. The words landed quietly, but they hit harder than anything else he could have said. My breath caught, because he was right. There had been a moment, a small one, where I could have pulled away, could have stepped back before things crossed into something irreversible. But I didn't, and now he knew that too. Silence settled between us again, heavier this time. I could feel it in the way my chest rose too fast, in the way my body stayed completely still, like any movement might make everything unravel further. I'm not going to tell anyone, he said finally, and something inside me should have felt relief. But it didn't, because of the way he said it. Low, certain, close, like it wasn't just a promise, it was a choice. And choices like that, they always come with a price. I swallowed slowly, my voice barely there when I spoke again. Why? Another step closer. Now there was barely any space left between us. His answer came softer this time, almost a whisper. Because now. His eyes flickered, not away, not uncertain, just deeper. I'm part of it too. I felt that before I understood it. The shift. Not in the room but in him. It was subtle, almost invisible. But something in the way he stood, the way his voice lowered, the way his eyes didn't leave mine. It changed the balance between us. And suddenly I wasn't just the one who got caught. I was the one being seen. Completely. You don't mean that, I said, even though my voice lacked conviction. He didn't step back. Didn't soften. If I didn't, he replied quietly, I would have walked out. That landed somewhere deep in my chest. Because he was right. He could have left. He should have left. But he didn't. My back brushed the edge of the nightstand as I shifted, needing space that didn't exist anymore. My fingers grazed the cool surface behind me, searching for something steady, something solid. But all I could feel was him. Close. Too close. You think this gives you something? I asked, my voice tightening. Leverage or? No. He cut me off gently. Not harsh. Not defensive. Just certain. That's not what this is. The quiet in his tone made it harder to argue. Because if he had pushed, if he had hinted at control, I could have resisted. I could have fought back. But he wasn't doing that. He was just standing there, letting the truth sit between us. Then what is it? I asked softer now. His gaze dropped briefly. Not away from me but lower, like he was tracing something invisible in the space between us. Then it came back up slower this time. More deliberate. It's honesty, he said. I almost laughed. Honesty? I repeated, the word feeling strange on my tongue. After what you just saw? Yes. A single step forward. Now I could feel the warmth of his breath when he spoke. Because you don't get to pretend anymore. My chest tightened. Every instinct in me wanted to pull away, to create distance, to rebuild the version of myself that existed before that door opened. But my body didn't move. And I hated that. You think you know me because of one moment? I whispered. His expression didn't change. I think I know the version of you that doesn't lie to herself. That hit harder than anything else. Because it wasn't accusing. It was precise. Silence filled the room again. But this time it felt different. Not heavy. Not suffocating. Charged. Like something was building under the surface. Something neither of us had fully named yet. My breath came slower now, deeper, like my body was adjusting to the closeness instead of fighting it. And he noticed. Of course he did. His hand lifted slightly. Not touching me, not yet. Just hovering for a second, like he was testing the space between us. Giving me time to stop him. I didn't. I should have. But I didn't. His fingers brushed mine. Barely there. Just enough to send a sharp, unexpected warmth up my arm. And everything inside me reacted. Too fast. Too honestly. My breath caught, my shoulders tensed, and for a second, I forgot how to think. He didn't move further. Didn't take more than that. But he didn't pull away either. You feel that? He asked quietly. I swallowed, my voice barely forming. That doesn't mean anything. A pause. Then softer. It means you're not as distant from this as you want to be. My heart was pounding again. Not from fear. Not entirely. And that terrified me more than anything else. Because this wasn't just about being caught anymore. This was something else. Something slower. More dangerous. Because now, it wasn't just a secret. It was a connection I didn't know how to break. I should have stepped away. That was the moment. The exact second where everything could have ended before it became something else. His fingers were still barely touching mine, light. Almost hesitant. Like even he didn't fully trust what he was doing. And I could have pulled back. Instead my hand shifted. Just slightly. But enough to meet his. His breath changed. It wasn't dramatic. Most people wouldn't have noticed. But I did. A quiet pause, a fraction deeper inhale. Like his body registered it before his mind had time to question it. And that's when I realized. This wasn't one-sided. You don't have to do that, he said, his voice lower now. But he didn't move his hand either. I let out a small, unsteady breath. I know. Another pause. The kind that feels like standing on the edge of something you can't see the bottom of. My fingers curled just slightly, brushing more firmly against his. The contact was still soft, still careful, but no longer accidental. The room felt smaller again. The air warmer. Like everything was closing in around that one point of connection. This is a bad idea, I whispered. He nodded. Yeah. But neither of us stepped back. His thumb moved, slow, almost absent-minded, tracing the side of my hand like he was learning something through touch alone. It sent a quiet shiver up my arm, settling somewhere deep in my chest. My eyes dropped to where our hands met, then back up to him. And that's when it shifted again. Because this time he didn't hide what was in his gaze. It wasn't just awareness anymore. It was curiosity, and something warmer underneath it. You looked at me differently before, he said quietly. My stomach tightened. What do you mean? He held my gaze. In the hallway. When you realized I saw you. My breath slowed, uneven. I was panicking. He shook his head slightly. Not just that. His voice softened, not weaker, just closer. There was a moment where you didn't look away. That memory hit me instantly. Sharp. Clear. The second our eyes locked, and instead of hiding, I froze. Not out of fear, but something else I hadn't wanted to name. I didn't know what to do, I said. That's not what it felt like. My heart skipped. Because I knew exactly what he meant. There had been hesitation, but there had also been something else. Recognition. His hand tightened just slightly around mine, still gentle but more certain now. And this time, I didn't pretend it was nothing. We shouldn't be doing this, I said again, but the words came out quieter, less convincing. I know. Still no movement away. Instead, he stepped closer. Now there was barely any space left between us. I could feel the warmth of him fully, the subtle rise and fall of his chest, the way the air between us felt charged with something neither of us was stopping anymore. My free hand hovered uncertainly near his arm, then rested there. Light, tentative, but intentional. His eyes dropped to it, then back to mine. And that's when the silence changed again. No longer uncertain, no longer questioning, just waiting. For one of us to decide what this was, or what it was about to become. My voice came out barely above a breath. If someone walks in again. They won't, he said softly. Too sure. Too calm. And somehow that certainty settled something inside me. Not completely, but enough. Because instead of stepping away, I stayed. And in that stillness, the line between wrong and inevitable quietly disappeared. I don't remember deciding. That's the part that still haunts me. There wasn't a clear moment where I thought, yes, this is what I'm going to do. It was quieter than that. Slower. Like something inside me just leaned forward, and everything else followed. My hand was still resting on his arm, feeling the warmth beneath the fabric, the subtle tension in his muscles. His fingers hadn't left mine. If anything, they held a little more firmly now, like he understood I wasn't pulling away. Like he knew. Say it, he murmured. His voice was low, close enough that I felt it more than heard it. My breath caught. Say what? That you want me to stop. The words hung there between us. Clear. Simple. Dangerous. Because he wasn't assuming. He was giving me a way out. And for a second, I almost took it. I could feel my heartbeat everywhere. In my chest, my throat, even in the tips of my fingers still tangled with his. My body felt too aware, too present, like every inch of me was listening for something I didn't fully understand. My voice faltered. His gaze didn't move, didn't pressure, just waited. That made it harder. Because if he had pushed, I could have resisted. If he had decided for both of us, I could have blamed him. But this was choice. My choice. My fingers tightened slightly against his arm, not pulling away. His breath shifted again, deeper this time, and I knew he felt it. You're not saying it, he whispered. I shook my head. Barely. The smallest movement. But enough. Something in his expression changed then. Not relief, not victory. Just acceptance. Like a door had opened and he was stepping through carefully, aware of exactly where it led. His hand lifted from mine slowly, giving me time to stop him. I didn't. His fingers brushed my wrist first, then traced upward, light but deliberate. My breath hitched instantly, my body reacting before I could think. Every nerve felt awake. Every inch of space between us felt like it was closing in. Tell me if it's too much, he said quietly. I nodded, even though I already knew I wouldn't. Because it wasn't. That was the problem. His hand reached my shoulder, resting there for a second, warm, steady. Then his thumb moved slightly, a small absent motion that sent a slow, unexpected heat through my chest. I exhaled, unsteady, and leaned in. I didn't mean to. At least, that's what I told myself later. But in that moment it felt natural. Like my body had already decided and I was just catching up. The space between us disappeared. Not all at once. Just enough. His forehead nearly brushed mine. His breath warm against my lips. The air between us impossibly thin now. Last chance, he murmured. My eyes closed for a second. And when I opened them, I didn't step back. Neither did he. The world didn't explode. Nothing dramatic happened. Just a quiet shift. As the distance we had been holding on to finally gave way. And in that moment, I knew. This wasn't about being caught anymore. This was something we were choosing to continue. It didn't feel like a mistake anymore. That was the first thing that scared me. Because mistakes are easy to regret. Easy to distance yourself from. You can point at them later and say that wasn't me. But this felt intentional. His hand was still on my shoulder, steady, grounding, like he was making sure I stayed right where I was. And I did. Not frozen, just present. Aware of everything. The warmth between us, the quiet rhythm of our breathing. The way the room seemed to shrink around us. "You're still here," he said softly. It wasn't a question. I swallowed. "So are you." A faint exhale left him. Almost a quiet laugh, but not quite. "Yeah." My fingers had moved without me noticing. Resting against his chest now, feeling the slow, controlled beat underneath. It was steady. More steady than mine. That contrast made something twist inside me. "Why aren't you angry?" I asked. The question slipped out before I could stop it. Because he should have been. Anyone would have been. He glanced down briefly at where my hand rested, then back up at me. His eyes softened, but not in a way that felt weak. In a way that felt certain. "I was," he said. Past tense. That hit me. "What changed?" I whispered. A pause. Then, "You didn't hide." My breath caught slightly. Because he was right. Even now. I wasn't. I wasn't stepping away, wasn't pretending this wasn't happening. If anything, I was leaning into it in ways I didn't fully understand. His hand shifted slightly on my shoulder, not pulling me closer. Just adjusting, like he was settling into the reality of this. "And now?" I asked. His gaze held mine, steady and unreadable for a second too long. Now I'm trying to understand why. That honesty did something to me. Something deeper than the tension, deeper than the closeness. It made this real. Not just physical. Not just impulsive. But something layered, complicated, dangerous in a completely different way. My fingers pressed slightly against his chest, feeling the fabric beneath them shift. "I didn't expect you to stay," I admitted. "I didn't either." Another pause. But this one felt different. Not uncertain. Not hesitant. Just full. Like everything had already been decided, and we were just standing in the aftermath of it. His hand moved again, this time slower, more deliberate, from my shoulder down along my arm, until his fingers found mine once more. This time there was no hesitation. No testing. Just contact. Warm. Certain. My breath softened, sinking without permission to the quiet rhythm between us. "You know this changes things," I said. "I know. And you're still." "Yes." He didn't let me finish. Didn't need to. Because whatever this was, he had already accepted it. And the truth was, so had I. Not fully. Not comfortably. But enough. Enough to stay. Enough to feel the way my body didn't resist his closeness anymore. Enough to realize that the secret wasn't just something he carried now. It was something we shared. And that made it heavier. More intimate. More impossible to undo. His voice dropped slightly, quieter now. "Are you going to pretend this didn't happen tomorrow?" The question lingered. Real. Unavoidable. I hesitated. Not because I didn't know the answer. But because saying it out loud would make it permanent. My fingers tightened slightly in his. And I shook my head. No. A slow breath left him. Not relief. Not tension. Just acknowledgement. "Good," he murmured. And in that moment, I realized something I hadn't let myself fully feel until now. This wasn't ending. This was just beginning. And somehow, that was the most dangerous part of all. The next morning didn't feel like morning. It felt like a quiet aftermath. The light coming through the window was soft, pale, almost too innocent for what it was touching. It spilled across the floor, climbed the edge of the bed, brushed against my hands like nothing had changed. But everything had. I sat on the edge of the mattress, elbows resting on my knees, staring at the floor like it might give me answers. My phone lay face down beside me. No messages. No missed calls. Too quiet. Behind me I heard movement. Not rushed. Not hesitant. Just steady. He stepped closer, stopping just behind me. Not touching, but near enough that I could feel the warmth of him again, like last night hadn't ended, just paused. "Did you sleep?" he asked. I let out a small breath, shaking my head. "Not really." "Yeah," he murmured. "Me neither." A pause. Then the quiet sound of fabric shifting as he leaned slightly against the wall beside me. Close, but not closing the space completely this time. Different. More careful. I finally turned my head just enough to look at him. His expression wasn't conflicted. That's what unsettled me most. It was calm, like he had already accepted whatever this was becoming. "Are you going to see him today?" he asked. The question landed heavier than it should have. I nodded slowly. "I have to." His jaw tightened just for a second. A small shift, but I noticed it. "Of course I did." "And are you going to tell him?" he added. That made my chest tighten. I looked down at my hands, fingers loosely intertwined, remembering how they had felt in his just hours ago. "No," I said quietly. The word hung there. Final. Honest. And somehow heavier than any lie. Another silence followed. But this one wasn't tense. It was understood. He pushed himself off the wall and stepped closer, stopping just in front of me now. I could see the shift in his breathing, the way his shoulders rose slightly before settling again. "You know what that means," he said. I did. This wasn't something that could be undone with distance or time. Not anymore. Because the moment he chose to stay, and I chose not to stop him, we crossed into something neither of us could pretend away. My eyes lifted to his. "I know." He studied me for a second like he was memorizing something. Not my face, something deeper. The version of me that existed only in this space, in this moment, in this secret. Then his hand moved, slower this time, more intentional, brushing lightly against mine where they rested on my knee. Not claiming, not asking, just there. And I didn't pull away. Because I couldn't. Because I didn't want to. And that truth settled quietly between us, more powerful than anything we could have said. Somewhere in the distance a car passed. The world was moving, continuing, unaware of the shift that had just rewritten everything inside this room. But we felt it. Every second of it. "I won't say anything," he said softly. I nodded. "I know." A small pause. Then, "But that doesn't mean I'll forget." My breath caught. Not from fear, but from the weight of what that meant. Because forgetting would have been easier, cleaner. This meant carrying it. Together. And separately. At the same time. I stood slowly, the space between us adjusting again but not breaking. My shoulder brushed his lightly as I moved past him. A simple, accidental contact that felt anything but accidental. At the door my hand rested on the handle. I hesitated. Just for a second. Then I looked back. He was still there. Watching. Not stopping me. Not asking me to stay. Just knowing. And somehow that was enough. I opened the door and stepped out into the quiet hallway. But the silence didn't follow me this time. It stayed behind. With him. With us. With everything we chose not to say. Some secrets don't destroy you when they're revealed. They change you when they're kept.